Hello, I am Lisa Gardner. I'm the CEO of OMS Strategic Advisors and host of the Uncompromised podcast, where we have an unwavering commitment to values, beliefs, authenticity, integrity, character that we know brings heart and care to an organization. I'm bringing you some of the brightest, uncompromised executives and thought leaders to discuss challenging corporate norms. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Judge Monica McCoy Purdy, a true pioneer in the legal arena. As the presiding judge of the 95th Judicial District in Dallas County, Texas, she leads in civil matters with unparalleled expertise. Notably, Judge Purdy holds the distinction of being the first African American to serve on the historic court in its nearly century-long existence. Prior to her election, Judge Purdy's exceptional legal acumen led to her unanimous appointment as Associate Judge of the Civil District Courts. She consistently receives top ratings as recognized in the Dallas Bar Association's annual Judicial Evaluation Poll, which is a true testament to her unwavering commitment to judicial excellence. Beyond the courtroom, Judge Purdy is a fervent advocate for education and community engagement. She has made significant contributions as president of the J.L. Turner Legal Association and regional director for the National Bar Association. Her impact is truly boundless. Join me in welcoming Judge Monica Purdy. Judge Purdy, I first want to say thank you so much for being a guest on the Uncompromised podcast. I was reflecting on knowing you these many years. And I remember meeting you, in the early years when we were newly married. Mm-hmm. This is before children. Mm-hmm. And I thought, not only is this a beautiful woman, not only is this a very smart woman, but you also have always had a very kind and very sweet spirit. And that has been consistent with you throughout the years. I've been able to observe that from afar as well as up close. And I've always been inspired by your character, your integrity, and your demeanor. It truly is a gift. And so when I was thinking about guests for this podcast, you have to know you were at the top of my list. Yeah. Definitely, I wanted to be guests that truly represent this whole uncompromised mindset of how they do life, whether it's professionally or it's personally. So what I want to do, and you can help lead me here, I want to go into the first question that I believe that would be a true blessing for everyone to hear you answer. And that is, where did you grow up? How did the environment of your upbringing, which includes, parents, siblings, family, how did that contribute to you making the hard choice not to compromise, to be the person that we know you to be? How did the teachings of your community contribute to that?
Oh, wow. Well, first, let me begin by saying thank you for having me. Thank you for that very sweet introduction. Anytime you're introduced, you kind of sit back like, are they really talking about me? But you are talking about me. And I love the name Uncompromised. And, when we talked a little bit about what you were trying to do here, I absolutely wanted to be a part of it. I was intrigued. I grew up in Tampa, Florida, grew up sort of in a working class family, grew up in a middle class neighborhood, even though my parents were working class individuals. My mother was a hospital administrator, and my father was a residential real estate broker. But many of the neighbors in our neighborhood were African American teachers, lawyers, doctors, things of that nature. And as it would be, my dad, as a residential real estate broker, he actually began to integrate a neighborhood by selling residential homes to more Black people moving into this particular neighborhood in Tampa, Florida. And it was during the early 1970s. And during that particular time, of course, when one Black family would move in, the next day, the neighbors that were white, their for sale sign would go up. And so what you had seen a lot, the white flight, they sort of left the neighborhoods and more Black people moved in. So obviously, I think the question was, what type of influence did my neighborhood growing up sort of have on me? as to where I'm at today. And as I mentioned, some of my examples were people that owned their own business, people that were either doctors, Black doctors at that time, the first in their rights back in not the first in their rights, but obviously those that had to deal with issues of race. If they were going to be a chief of staff at a particular majority hospital, there were lawyers in our particular neighborhood. The gentleman that published actually the Black newspaper lived in our neighborhood. These were people that I knew. People that had been in their homes, and people obviously that were a good example of what excellence looked like. People that were thriving, people that had a mother and father in their home, and people that really probably all agreed on one thing, and that was with education. You could control a lot of your circumstance, meaning the more educated you were, the more control you could have sort of on the outcome of your life. So I think that was something that probably resonated with me at an early age, something that was taught in my home. Education was key. Education was a way to sort of make sure that you could stay away from poverty. Education was a way to sort of elevate yourself. And education was a way to sort of achieve success, whatever success might look for you. So that was always sort of laid, the groundwork that was laid for me. My parents both went to college. They both graduated from college. They did not go on to graduate school after that. But of course, the presumption was we went to college and now you have to go even further than we did.
That's right.
So I knew from a very young age, probably around 5th or 6th grade, that I wanted to be a lawyer because I had a godfather that grew up 2 doors down from me that was a lawyer. And I just saw the way that the community responded to him. I saw when there was an issue in the community or in the town, typically there was a meeting at his home about it. What can we do? How can we organize? And I just wanted to be that particular go-to person for my community. And I learned very early on, I don't think I probably had a great understanding of what a lawyer did as a young child, but I was able to at least grasp that they speak for people that can't speak for themselves.
Yes.
So I knew that. But yeah, that's a little bit about my upbringing. I grew up in Tampa, Florida, and had a lot of great examples of neighbors and family friends that always wanted children to achieve.
That's great. You know what that shows me, and it really comes out in you, Monica, that you come from a very strong foundation. It's a strong foundation of community. It's a strong foundation of caring. It's a strong foundation of understanding what you could achieve because you saw others that did it and looked like you, and including your parents. And I think that's funny. My parents had the same thing. They said, "Oh, you've got to go further than what we've done. You have to." Yeah, you can't stop where we stopped. I said,
Right.
which we've also challenged our own children to do so. I'm sure that you have as well. So, this leads to my next question. It's a good segue in saying, what do you believe has been the most challenging professionally in keeping true to who Monica, Judge Purdy, is as it relates to not compromising? And then I want to switch that and ask that same question from a personal level as well. And just
let's see, a challenge. We're 2 women here on this particular podcast.
Yes.
I think a challenge for most women is, how can you sort of have it all and stay true to who it is you wish to be or who it is you evolve to become? Because I think you might have an idea of what you want to be, but then you find a piece that this is me. One of the consistent things that I hear about myself is that I am authentic. It's very difficult for me to be anything other than what I present. I, have heard that as a plus, and I've heard it as a minus. Sometimes I can be maybe direct and honest, but I always appreciated maybe those friends that could have a hard conversation with me.
That's right.
So
That's right.
I don't tend to necessarily bite my tongue, but I also don't have ill will or malice when I need to speak up for myself or say something. So I offer it in the spirit that I think I give it. But a big challenge is just trying to balance having it all, having a family, making sure that you present an example for your children. Something that is very big for me, and I think it was big even before I got into this profession. And I think it just came from the foundation that was laid to me. Integrity. Integrity is something that should not be compromised. And if you are in a position where they want you to compromise integrity, I know for me, that's not the position for me.
For me, that's right.
And luckily, I haven't been in a professional situation where anyone has asked me to compromise my integrity.
That's right.
It's a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more hairy, because when you become a lawyer, you obviously have a license and you have duties that you have to honor on that particular license. But I have not been asked to compromise myself, but it is a struggle sort of to balance everything you need to do once you have a family. And even when is it right to even start that family? I know you and I have talked quite a bit.
Yes.
I know that I really put in a lot of work. I felt on the front end of my career. I was a lawyer at a law firm. I achieved the ranks of partner, which, most likely that's what people like to do. They like to reach partnership status. And I felt like, oh, now that I'm a partner, I kind of have more control over my schedule, more control over my calendar, and I will go ahead at this time and start my family. But obviously there were struggles that came along with starting that family that I had not anticipated.
Yes.
And that was hard. That was hard to deal with. And now looking back at it, I don't recall it as I recalled it back then, but it was very challenging to know that I sort of put all this hard work in, and now it's time to do this. And why isn't it happening when it should happen for me?
Absolutely.
Or when I thought it should happen for me. But now that I am on the other side of 50, I can tell you what I have learned is it happens when God says it is time for it to happen.
Absolutely.
So your timing is not always his timing.
I mean, that's right.
And so that is something that you have to contend with. But professionally, I would say that, I was at a law firm for a long time. I liked a law firm that I was with, and I had to I struggled with it when it was time for me to go, when it was time for me to venture out and do additional things. So I think a struggle, and maybe for many of your listeners that might benefit from this, is they have an ideal maybe as to how their career should pan out. And you might come across an instance where, it's pushing you to do something different. And so I think probably what I struggled with the most was leaving something that was really safe for me, going out into the unknown. And so that was hard, but like anything, God replaced what I left tenfold with what I thought I lost.
That's right.
And so I could not see that at that time, but it was really a faith walk for me to step away from a law firm that had done well by me. I had a good trajectory there to say, hey, I'm changing course. I want to do something else. And then that something else was, I've always said I wanted to become a judge. How am I going to get there now? I've stepped away. It's not like I stepped away to go to another job. I stepped away, and I stepped away from a very comfortable paycheck. I stepped away from a good trajectory. But I stepped away to pursue what I wanted to pursue. And it worked out for me. I am happy with my decision. And if I wouldn't have stepped away, I might not be where I'm at today.
Exactly. Going back to when you said, especially when you're talking about personally as well as professionally, it's all in God's timing. things don't always happen the way that we have planned it. And you talked about there was a process. What, if you could sort of sum up, what is the process you take in changing trajectory in your life? What process do you take in saying, what, if it's not this, then it must be this? How do you keep yourself flexible enough to stay within the destiny, their passion, the path that is set before you, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think for me, I have a core set of friends, a core set of girlfriends, most that I met while I was in law school, and one that I've had since college days. They know everything about me.
Yes.
And I mean, I do mean everything. And, I typically take to about 2 or 3 of them any concerns that I have, what I'm struggling with, what I'm up against. And I have one particular friend from law school that she's like, okay, hey, let's just map this out. Here are the pluses, what could the possible minuses be? So she's very good. And she's obviously a litigator, and now over a litigation for a oil company down in Houston. But she is very good at having you to look at things from different ways. What's the best case scenario? What's worst case scenario? What's your fallback on? So I have that person that is very technical and can have you sort of lay things out and map things out. And then I have another friend like, okay, that's great, but what does your heart say? What are you going to be happy with? I'm not a lawyer, I'm a dentist, but I know you, and I don't think you're going to be happy with that, because this is what you're going to be calling me saying.
Right.
And so I sort of, mesh the two together. I like to call them my board of governors, if you will,
Right.
of
I
which
like,
I'm the CEO.
yes.
And I just kind of get their input on a lot of different things and kind of internalize that with what I'm already processing. And I kind of try to make a decision based upon that. Certainly not based upon what they tell me, but I think I'm able to maybe hear some things from them that I could be overlooking or maybe not thought about.
Yes.
I really respect their decision, and I know they'll be honest with me. I know they will be honest with me, and they will tell me the truth, and tell me the truth even if it's something I may not agree with.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I kind of just take all the information that I have, and something that I've been very good with doing is listening to my gut once I have all of that information. Okay, yeah, it is risky, but I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to go for it because I have passion telling me I should. Something is telling me it's now or never. And I'm going to get after it. And if it doesn't work out, I have a plan B, and I'll just do this. But I think just really being just very meticulous about what's in front of me, what's the choice, what's the pluses, what's the minuses, that feels good. And then checking in sort of with me from a personal standpoint as to now what's the emotional toll that this will take on you. Has nothing to do with work. Just, are you going to be happy with this? Are you going to be able to come home? Are you going to be able to balance it? How are your kids going to play into this, and different things like that? So really, I think just looking at a problem from a whole bunch of different angles and having 2 or 3 people that are really close to me point out what they think the issues are in my analysis, or what the issue should be in my analysis.
That's good, because Monica, you just pointed out something that I think I read a long time ago. When you look at highly successful people, is that they always surround themselves with those who can give wisdom, not in what they want to hear, but hear what is right for them. And so having that kind of, choosing your friends, your associates very closely, right?
Right. Your tribe. You got to have a tribe.
You have to have a tribe. And the tribe has to be one that operates in wisdom for you, right? So I think that's great. And so let me ask you this. I'm going to sort of segue into this next question. And I think it's something that, especially in this day and time, that I think we're harder trying to understand is how do you handle victory? That's an easy question. How do you handle victory? And then how do you handle disappointment?
Yeah, I think how do you handle victory? I would hope that I handle victory with humility.
Mm.
Um,
You were
you know,
going to say that. Yes.
I think that one of the things that you mentioned is with my election to the particular seat that I sit on here in Dallas
Yes.
County, I'm
Yes.
actually the first African American elected to that bench in 100 years. And while that sounds like, whoa, that's a big deal, and it is a big deal,
Yes.
um, I'm cognizant of the fact that I didn't get here by myself. And it's shameful to be the first Black elected in 100
Mm.
years.
Mm.
Um, I take pride in knowing that once I leave the spot that I'm in, hopefully it will be many more African Americans that
Coming
follow.
up behind you. That's right.
And so I want to make sure that I create or leave a situation where they will follow and they will be better than me. So I think I take victory with humility, understanding that it is a group effort. It is not something that Monica has done on her own. Many people have poured into Monica in order for Monica to do what she's able to do. And so I take all those people with me when I do earn a victory. I had a gentleman today in court asking for a new trial on behalf of his client. And one of the things, there was a very long trial that we've already had, and a jury has spoken on this particular issue, but he seemed concerned that, Judge, I know you might not want to do this again because it was such a long trial, and I can try to shorten it for you, if I'm successful on my motion for new trial. And I had not ruled as of that particular time, but I mentioned, you don't have to shorten anything on behalf of your client. When I was elected to this bench, I'm elected to make sure that everyone that appears before it gets justice.
That's right.
Whether that takes a day, whether or not it takes 3 months, that is what I've been elected to do my job. And I will do that job on behalf of anybody who comes through this courtroom. So I think I take victory with humility. And in terms of defeat, I can tell you that I can just remember maybe from being a child, and I can't remember maybe what I lost. Maybe it was a student election or something like that. But
Yes.
my mother pretty much was of the opinion, I will allow you to sulk and feel sorry for yourself for one night. We can lay in bed and have ice cream, but after that, we're regrouping and we're going to get a plan.
Yes.
So I can tell you that losses that I have had, I think that I've come back. They just push me harder. Once I get over that initial gut check, I think that they just push me harder the next time that I'm coming back, because I don't like to lose. So I'll be back.
I'll be back. And I think you and I discussed, along we were discussing about, just some of our personal lives, adversity in our personal lives. But I think you and I discussed that the greatest learning is through our failures.
Correct.
And, when I think back even through my lifetime, how I handled the failure actually took me to a higher level of learning than actually the victory. And I think that you were saying something of that nature as well when we were having coffee just about a month ago. So any other comments that you want to add to that would be great as well.
No, I think everybody has, you should take an opportunity and assess whatever failures you deem as a failure. You really should take the time to check off your list what actually was a failure. What I have learned is everything is a learning opportunity.
Yes.
It's a learning opportunity. And so and it's meant to teach you something.
Yes.
So take the lesson.
Yes.
But you don't have to take the loss, but take the lesson.
That's right.
There's a lesson in it. And you get to decide what you're going to do with that lesson. So any loss that I have had, I think I've taken the time to kind of determine, what is this trying to teach me? What have I learned as a result of the loss? And how am I going to overcome that the next time around? So what seems like a loss sometimes really isn't a loss. It's more so a lesson.
That's good. That's good.
Mhm.
Very important. Because, one thing I want to discuss is, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned through adversity? And the greatest lesson has been knowing just what you just said. That is a great lesson to learn through adversity.
Right. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So very good. Let me switch gears again. This is a huge topic, as you know, going through our country right now. But
Mhm.
let me ask you this. How do you explain diversity, equity, and inclusion to those who are trying to understand the importance of it within our professional, social platforms, communities, and organizations?
Yeah, obviously it's a big issue right now. And I think the bigger issue is it's frustrating for those that don't get it, don't understand it, and to attempt to explain it to them. Obviously, in the legal profession, it is a field of white males. And so, if I have sort of someone that I feel like, okay, they're really trying to understand, they're really trying to be an ally, but they just don't get it. Um, I try to come to them with a scenario that I think they can grasp or that they can understand, or maybe they hadn't thought about.
Very
And
good.
so, for instance, something that comes to mind, obviously, race is a hard issue to talk about with people outside of your race, and even, to a certain degree, difficult to talk about with some within the
Within
race.
the race, yes.
But, for instance, with college admissions and the issue that has just come up with not being able to use race as
Mhm,
any basis for college admission,
mhm.
um, you know, legacy admissions basically
Yes.
result in the same type of end product. So, how is legacy being used in terms of admission any different from using race as a basis for admission? And trying to allow someone to understand, oh, yeah, well, I never thought of that particular way. Or, one of the interesting things that I think happened was during sort of the Supreme Court argument. I
Mhm.
believe one of the justices asked, how long do we continue to sort of offer these types of admissions until everybody's on some type of equal footing? And,
Mhm.
my instant thought was, well, how long has slavery been? 400 and however many years. Um, I would suggest at least that long at a minimum, because at the end of the
Right.
day, I guess I just would try to explain it to someone as it's just not a level playing field. And until we
Yeah.
have a level playing field, you're going to continue to have polarization, people not appreciating differences, and it will just continue to be that way until we can understand that it just needs to be that. And that's all we're asking. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for a level playing
Mhm.
field.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great answer. And it often makes me wonder, and I want you to answer this question too, what do you believe are the challenges facing women of color professionally, and how should they respond without compromising?
I mean, I think we all know if you are a woman of color, and
Mhm.
I don't think this has changed. I don't think this has changed maybe for the younger generation or for my generation.
No.
You have to be better than a white woman candidate, a white male candidate, or even a black male candidate. You cannot afford any mistakes. You
Mhm.
have to be better. You have to be better on paper. You have to interview better.
Mhm.
Um, and that's just how it is.
Yes.
That's still a challenge. I don't
Absolutely.
know that we are going to win the challenge of turning back the clock. That's always been with us, and it will continue to be with us. But you have to be over prepared, over qualified, and do what it takes in order to get that particular job or task done. So I don't know how we overcome that.
Mhm.
We don't have the option that
Mhm.
when we are interviewing for a job or we're in corporate America, that certain things are going to be presumed.
Mhm.
It's sort
Mhm.
of like you have to prove yourself. And once you have proven yourself, then maybe you won't get a lot of questions asked of you. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
when I was elected to the bench, and most new judges go through that, the lawyers that are appearing before you that don't know you as well, they want to see what they can push, what they can do,
Mhm.
and how you'll
Mhm.
respond to that.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
think that one of the things that I've always sort of knew or championed, or that was placed in me, was no one can take away competency. And so if you are competent in your craft or field and
Mhm.
you make yourself valuable, they must deal with you.
Yes.
They must include you.
Yes.
So, and I don't care what color you are,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
gender you are.
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
if you have the competency and you have that skill set that they're looking for and you offer value,
You must be invited to the table.
you're going to be
Absolutely.
invited. You're going
Absolutely.
to be
But
invited.
it goes back to when I asked you about your family and you told me how you were raised with the importance of, I mean, not only your faith is important, but also God wanting to expand you on your education and how education was very much stressed in your life. It's the same ideal. That was training way back when to
Right.
understand that competency cannot be denied.
It cannot.
So,
So,
yes.
I often tell people, I think maybe some of the younger generations, this person on LinkedIn, can you get me a
Mhm.
job? And I'm like, hey, it doesn't work like that. Like, yeah, I could
Yeah.
probably call someone for you, but let
Right.
me suggest you
Yes.
will not be there long if you can't
Yes.
perform. If you can't
Right.
perform and do the job, I
Yes.
don't care who you know.
That's right.
I
That's
don't care
right.
who you're related to. They're going to ask you up out of there.
Yes.
Because if you are not impacting their bottom line,
That's
you're
right.
going to have to go. And
You
I
have
don't
to
care
go.
who you are.
You have
So,
to be qualified. And I think that was such a educational point when I went into different circles, different dynamics to discuss the affirmative action decision. In fact, it was never about whether we were qualified or not. The competency of African Americans was it was the resource, it was the open opportunity to be able
right,
to take part of an education of that level. And so that even goes in within the workforce as well.
correct.
And that's what you're getting back to. Competency cannot be denied.
It
That has
cannot.
to be the sole focus. Yep, I would agree. So, Monica, let's go into another question here, and I just want to make sure I understand clearly. How has the affirmative action decision affected the institution of law? Or has it affected it? How has it affected that future law student or those lawyers that are within the industry currently? What are you seeing as far as organizational changes that are being made? Are you seeing anything? What are you seeing from your perspective?
Well, I don't know that I'm seeing necessarily any particular organizational changes. I'm obviously at a courthouse, a state courthouse, or trial court. We're
Mhm.
elected by voters. So I don't know that we're seeing it in our particular area where we
That's
are.
right.
With
That's true.
respect to law students, my view on that is a little bit different. I attended Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas, which is an HBCU. So,
Hmm.
the majority of the students there are minorities. So that was an intentional choice on my part, not because I knew this DEI decision was coming down. I just chose to be in an environment where I was being educated from people that look like me, people that understood my experience,
Hmm.
and people that could prepare me to enter a environment that wasn't going to look like me, and sort of just basically re-urge sort of those lessons that I had learned early on, that you definitely have to be better from the next person standing there. So I think for law students, we all know that, the number of white lawyers outnumber African American lawyers. That's
Yes.
the way of the world. Whether or not this particular decision will make those numbers dwindle even more, I'm not sure.
Yes.
One of the things here in Texas, I don't know that Texas, because we do have such great state schools here in Texas. I don't
Mhm.
know that our institutions here, our colleges and law schools, um, I don't know if they're so interested in attracting people from out of state. Obviously, if you are
Yes.
coming to law school and you are going to make a huge investment in your law school career, because of the politics in Texas right now, you might not want to come to Texas. But I don't know that
Mhm.
Texas sees that as such an issue because its applications are just, they get hundreds of applications from people that live inside of Texas. But
Mhm.
I just happen to think from a personal standpoint, it's never good to have everybody that thinks the same, is educated the same, and that looks the same. You learn when there's a different perspective sitting at that table, and you learn when people
Mhm.
enter your state from outside of the state. So
Yes.
I don't know, what those numbers look like and if law school admissions have necessarily gone down. I do know that there are still some law schools out there that intend to make sure that they have a diverse body of students. And I've
Mhm.
read a lot of articles about how they intend to achieve that in light of the decision that's out
Mhm.
there. But
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
majority law schools here in Texas, African Americans don't make up a great number of those. That has been the case. And I would assume it's going to stay the case, especially in light of the decision that was made recently on affirmative action.
Yes, very, very good. A great answer, I think, to our listeners. And as they look at just the future of law, it's
Mhm.
absolutely. So thank you. And here's the last question, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay.
What brings your heart joy over the span of your career? And what may bring your heart maybe just a little bit of sadness over the span of your career? I've gone to
Um,
one emotion to the other, just to just so our listeners know that in spite of a fantastic career, there are moments like you expressed earlier, there was adversity.
mhm.
There's moments of sadness. We talk a lot about mental health and that kind of thing. Not saying that is something that you've gone through, but a lot of our listeners in the younger generation, some are very challenged, very talented um, young people are challenged with sometimes those kinds of things.
Right,
And I think for me, I want them to know that every emotion is okay and it has nothing to do with where you're going. You're going to
right,
continue to push forward. You will continue to be successful.
right.
So I'm asking that question in that vein. If there is something you can think of sharing with our listeners.
Yeah, I think that when I guess I'll start with the latter question first. Something that makes me sad is sort of, knowing that suicide is so high amongst our young adults, to know that they struggle with mental health. I think social media plays a lot into that realm.
Mhm.
And, just the type of pressure that they had on them that I don't think necessarily you and I had, basically when we were growing up or coming along.
That's
Um,
right.
so, but what makes me happy, is to know that these topics are not taboo anymore, that people
Mhm.
are being more open and transparent about their struggles and
Yes.
how they can get help and how there is help you along the way. So I'm glad to see that mostly all of our schools are integrating mental health and wellness. I am glad to see that we have more students. You know, I have a daughter that's in college, and of course, some of my friends, their kids are off in college, and so
Mhm.
many people are saying, "Hey, my child is going to take a break. They're going to take a gap year this year," and I'm like,
Yes.
"Oh, really? Like, what's going on?" And they're like, "They said they needed a break." So I'm glad to see people really self-advocating for
Mhm.
themselves. And
Mhm.
I am happy to know that we, as parents, are in a position where we can allow them to take a gap year.
Yes.
Um, you know,
Yes.
something that I will say is, obviously as a person of color, I'm like, what's a gap year? I didn't have that as an option.
Right, there was no option.
There was no gap year.
There was no gap year. It was called pay your bills.
Pay your bills. Hurry up and get off of the payroll.
And get
so
right.
I am happy, though, that we have arrived at a point as parents that we've been put in a position that we can afford our children an opportunity to take that gap. And even for those that can't afford to take the gap, to take that hit or take that particular gap year, they know I need a break. And I need a break. And I'm going to figure out how to get myself this break because it's important for my whole self to be whole.
That's right.
That's so right. I am happy to know that we're paying more attention to that and that people are doing what they need to do for self in order to be better.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you for being a guest on this podcast. I want you to know that this is going out to an audience that truly you would be very proud of, millennials, Gen Xers that truly are the next and up and coming judges and lawyers and business people and doctors. And so thank you for giving your time to them to share.
Thank you for having me. And I look forward to meeting so many of these young people that are coming behind because I know they're going to do it even bigger or better than I could ever have imagined.
Absolutely. And we are trying to plan something. After so many episodes, we will be getting them into a room and asking folks like yourself to be on a panel and let them answer questions and meet you up close and personal. So thank you, Monica.